Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Janavala Kiranajari Gopi Janavala Kiranajari Yashoda Nandana Vraja Janarandana Yashoda Nandana Vraja Janarandana Yamuna Tira Yamuna Tira Anachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Janavala Kiranajari Yashoda Nandana Vraja Janarandana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Thank you. Okay. All right. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivraj Acharya Ashtotara Sata Sri Srimad A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivraj Acharya Ashtotara Sata Sri Srimad Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Srila Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Srila Satchinandana Bhakti Vinod Kaur Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Vaishnava Sarvabhuma Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Jaya Shri Rupa Sanata Bhatta Raghunatha Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Das Raghunatha Sad Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakun Radhakun Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Shri Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Ganga Mai Ki Jai. Yamuna Mai Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Tulsi Devi Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai. Gurunath Raj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. ISKCON Burma Guru Vrinda Ki Jai. Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Ora Brahmanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Sri Guru Sri Gauranga. Glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Narayana Namaskritya Naram Jaiva Narottamam Devam Saraswatam Vyasam Tato Jayam Yuridayat Nasta Preshu Avatareshu Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Can you shut the door, please? By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam and by the rendering of service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed. And loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. All right. So today is December 22nd, 2024, and we're going to be reading from Canto 4, Creation of the Fourth Order, Chapter 25, the description of the characteristics of King Puranjana, and we'll be doing verse 30. Okay. Yadeshama Panga Vikanti Tandriyam Savrita Bhavasmita Vibramadruva Vayopasristo Bhagavan Manobhava Prabhadate Tanugrahana Shobhane Yadeshama Panga Vikanti Tandriyam Savrita Bhavasmita Vibramadruva Vayopasristo Bhagavan Manobhava Prabhadate Tanugrahana Shobhane Yadeshama Panga Vikanti Tandriyam Savrita Bhavam Smita Vibramadruva Vayopasristo Bhagavan Manobhava Prabhadate Tanugrahana Shobhane. Okay, please repeat.
Yadeshama Panga Vikantitendriyam Savrita Bhavasmita
Vibramadruva Vayopasristo Bhagavan Manobhava Prabhadate Tanugrahana Shobhane. Yadeshama Panga Vikantitendriyam Savrita Bhavasmita Vibramadruva Vayopasristo Bhagavan Manobhava Prabhadate Tanugrahana Shobhane. Okay, word for word. Yeah. Because. Esha. This. Ma. Me. Apanga. By your glances. Vikandita. Agitated.
agitate,
Indriyam,
indriyam,
whose senses or mind.
whose senses are mind,
Savrida,
savrita,
with shyness.
with shyness,
Bhava,
bhava,
affection.
affection,
Smita,
smita,
smiling.
smiling,
Vibramat,
vibramat,
bewildering.
bewildering,
Ruva,
ruva,
with eyebrows.
with eyebrows,
Vaya,
vaya,
Vayu,
vayu,
Upasricha, Upasricha,
urvashrishta,
being influenced.
being influenced,
Bhagavan,
bhagavan,
most powerful.
most powerful,
Manabhava,
manava,
Cupid,
cupid,
Prabhadhate,
prabhadane,
is harassing.
is harassing,
Ata,
atha,
therefore,
therefore,
Anugrahana,
Nugrahan,
be merciful.
be merciful,
Shobhane,
Shobhane,
oh very beautiful ones.
O very beautiful one.
Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Certainly, your glancing upon me today has very much agitated my mind. Your smile, which is full of shyness, but at the same time lusty, is agitating the most powerful Cupid within me. Therefore, O most beautiful, I ask you to be merciful upon me. Please repeat. Certainly, your glancing upon me today has very much agitated my mind.
Certainly your glancing upon me today is very much agitated my mind.
Your smile,
Your smile,
which is full of shyness,
which is full of shyness,
but at the same time lusty,
but at the same time lusty,
is agitating the most powerful Cupid within me.
is agitating the most powerful Cupid within me.
Therefore,
Therefore,
almost beautiful,
almost beautiful,
I ask you to be merciful upon me.
I ask you to be merciful upon me.
Purport. Everyone has lusty desires within, and as soon as one is agitated by the movement of a beautiful woman's eyebrows, the Cupid within immediately throws his arrow at the heart. Thus, one is quickly conquered by the eyebrows of a beautiful woman. When one is agitated by lusty desires, his senses are attracted by all kinds of vishaya, enjoyable things like sound, touch, form, smell, and taste. These attractive sense objects oblige one to come under the control of a woman. In this way, the conditional life of a living entity begins. Conditional life means being under the control of a woman, and certainly the living entity is always at the mercy of a woman or a man. Thus, living entities live in bondage to one another, and thus they continue this conditional material life illusion by Maya. Om Jnana-timirandasya Janjana Shalakaya Chakshuramilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Darati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Kamalam Shri Guram Vaisnavamsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatan Sahagana Raghunatha Amatam Tam Sajivam Savadetam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Pada Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakamatamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagapate Kopesha Kopeka Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Go Rangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sutta Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindham Priyevacha Patinanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Okay, so I think the last time we heard about the power of a woman's eyebrows was somewhere in the third canto, I think. Do you remember, Chris? It was somewhere in the third canto. So this verse in purport is reminding us just how easy it is to be carried away by our desires. So just a movement of the eyebrows of a woman is enough to preoccupy the mind. And so when I was preparing for this class, I suddenly had this memory of my first love. So I was about 14 years old, and I think he was about 16 years old. And, you know, we dated for a few years, which was quite a long time for most young couples at that age. And whatever, we went our separate ways. It didn't work out, big surprise. So many years later, we're both in our 30s, and I ran into him somewhere. And he said, you know, man, you always just had the best eyebrows. So, so for like a few decades, that's what he's thinking about, right? I mean, certainly not all the time, but I was like, okay. So when I was preparing for this verse, and last time when we talked about the power of a woman's eyebrows, I was a little dubious. I thought, really? I don't know. But then I just remembered that conversation, and I was like, oh, well, I guess there must be some truth to it, because apparently that's what won me him in the first place, was my eyebrows when I was a teenager. So, so also, you know, does anyone know what a geisha is? A geisha is like a Japanese woman that would be an entertainer. She was an entertainer and often would entertain men. They were also very skilled in other, like, you know, song and dance and all kinds of other things. But their primary function was to be an entertainer, and then often for men usually. And it was said that in a movie about geishas one time, it was said that you're not a true geisha until you can stop a man in his tracks with one glance, right? And that's how you knew that you were skilled at what you do. And so this attraction to the opposite sex, it can make us abandon all sense. I mean, another story from my past, when I was, again, a teenager, I don't remember exactly how old. One time my mother and I, we had to go to the courthouse for something. We had to go to court. And so we were all dressed very nicely, you know, in dresses. And we were crossing the street to get to the courthouse. And there was this man riding a bicycle, and he was coming the opposite way in the crosswalk. And he decided that he wanted to look at both of us. My mom was also a very attractive woman. And so he's trying to cross the street while still looking at us, and he's not watching where he's going at all. And he crashed into a telephone pole. And so, because he was just too busy looking at us trying to cross the street, and started laughing and then ran in the courthouse. So yeah, this attraction to the opposite sex can sort of make us abandon all sense. We think about one of the classic stories of romance, right? What do you think the most classic story of romance that people think of is, regardless of the actual story? It's usually like Romeo and Juliet, right? But if you know that story, it's not very romantic at all, right? So, I mean, in that story, it's two young teenagers who come from families that are fighting with each other, and they fall in love. And so within a matter of days, they decide, like, oh, they have to be together. They can't be apart, but their families are fighting, so that it doesn't really look good for them. So at one point, you know, they spend one night together, and Romeo gets banished from the city, and he's no longer allowed to come in the city. So Juliet, she's totally distraught. She goes to the priest, and the priest makes a plan to reunite the two young lovers, and he marries them in secret, and he wants to reunite them. So the priest gives her some poison that's going to make her appear to be dead, and then he's going to take her to the crypt, and then he's going to bring Romeo there, and then they can run off together and live happily ever after. So the first half of the plan goes well. She takes the poison. She appears to be dead, but she's not actually dead. They take her to the crypt. Only here's something that went wrong is Romeo finds out that, oh no, Juliet died. So he sneaks back in the city. He sees her in the crypt, and he thinks, oh, my dear love is dead. So he goes and gets some poison, and he goes back to the crypt, and he kind of holds Juliet, and he takes the poison. And as he takes the poison, his poison is real, and he's actually dying. And during that process, Juliet wakes up and sees what's happened and says, "Oh my gosh, now my dear love, now he's dying." And so he dies, and she's completely distraught. And then she kills herself with a dagger. And so they both end up dead. It's not a very romantic story at all. And this is because that attraction, this is only in a few days. It was not long at all, just a few days. Now 2 young people ended up dead because they had abandoned all sense, right? They could have just waited, a little bit, or, maybe talked with their families, tried to work something out, but no, they abandoned all sense. Now they're both dead, and both families are upset. We can see this also. There was a story in the news some years ago. Perhaps some of you remember it. There was a woman, and she was very accomplished. She was an astronaut, and she had a love affair with another astronaut, or he might have been in the military. I don't remember exactly. And then he ended up having another affair with another young lady. And when the first young lady found out about this, she decided to drive all the way across the country, and she even wore diapers so she didn't have to stop to go to the bathroom on the way. And she brought with her like duct tape and rope and all kinds of pepper spray, all kinds of things like that. And then she went and found the young lady and assaulted her. And she was charged with kidnapping, with assault, with, what else was it, burglary, all because she had lost all complete sense because of her attraction to this other man. And she ended up losing her job and being humiliated in front of the entire country, if not the entire world, right? Because she had lost all sense. That doesn't make sense to do that, right? But that attraction so strong, it just makes us do crazy things. Also think about, people that, they talk to someone on the internet and they think, oh, this is my love. Oh, I love them so much. Let me just send them all my money. I'm going to send them all my money, and then they can come visit me. And then, well, guess what? That person never comes because they were never real, right? And it's because they have that attraction. They're abandoning all sense. I mean, most people know I should not send all my money to someone I've never met, right? Someone I've never seen. But because of that attraction, that strong attraction, people just lose all sense. The same with guys, who leave their family for their young secretary, or women that stay into really horrible abusive situations, right? Why do they always say, oh, well, I love him, right? That's what they always say. There's an expression called a fool for love, but it should be a fool for lust, right? That's what it is. So the Bhagavad Gita says, in the 2nd chapter, while contemplating the objects of the senses, a person develops attachment for them. And from such attachment, lust develops. And from lust, anger arises. From anger, complete delusion arises. And from delusion, bewilderment of memory. When memory is bewildered, intelligence is lost. And when intelligence is lost, one falls down again into the material pool. So from all those examples that I gave, you can definitely see that to be true, right? You become attached to the idea of being with a certain person, and then you develop lust, and then you get angry because you're not getting what you want, right? You're not able to fulfill that lust, or maybe you are. Now you're getting jealous, whatever it is, and you become delusioned and bewildered, and then your intelligence is lost, and you end up driving across the country in diapers to assault some lady while losing your job. Your very prestigious job, as an astronaut. So this is not only the realm of us mere mortals, or us mere not spiritually advanced people. There's also many stories from the Vedas that tell of things like this. So this made me think of King Pandu. So does everybody remember this story? King Pandu, he was the king of the Kurus. And his older brother was actually going to be king, but his older brother was Dhritarashtra, but he was blind. And so Pandu was made king. And Pandu, he had two wives, Queen Kunti and Madri. And one day he was out hunting and he shot a deer that was enjoying with his lady deer. And turns out that this deer was not a regular deer. This deer was actually a great sage who was enjoying with his lady friend. And so he was mad. He was mad to be interrupted. And he ended up cursing King Pandu that if he ever tried to enjoy with his wife, or any lady for that matter, that he would die. And so naturally what this meant is that, well, he wouldn't be able to have any children, right? Or, I mean, he could maybe, potentially, but he would die. I'm not sure if the curse would take place, when he approached his lady friend or when they finished, I don't know. But let's suffice to say he wasn't able to have children. So he renounced the throne and went to the forest with his two wives. So now when he's telling his wife Kunti about his desire for children, she tells him, well, actually, I have this boon. I have this boon where I can, I have a mantra where I can ask any demigod to come down and give me a child, give me a son. And so King Pandu, he's pretty pleased with this. And he says, well, please, use your mantra. So first, so he wanted her to ask Dharmaraj to come down and give her a son. And so that's how Yudhisthira was born. Then Vayu was asked to come down, and that's how Bhima was born. And then finally Indra was asked to come down, and that's how Arjuna was born. So now Madri, King Pandu's other wife, she also wanted sons, and so Kunti let her use the mantra also. And so she ended up having twins, Nakula and Sahadev. And so now we have the Pandavas, the 5 Pandava brothers. And what ended up happening is one day King Pandu, he was out in the forest with Madri, and suddenly he was just overcome with desire for his wife. And even though he knew the curse was there, he couldn't stop himself. And he tried to enjoy with her anyway, and he died. And Madri, she felt pretty terrible about this, and her and Kunti discussed it. And Madri decided that she was going to ascend the funeral pyre and die with her husband, join him in death. And Kunti was going to take care of the children. And so that's what happened. And so even King Pandu, who was this great king, he was not able to conquer lust, right? He knew without a doubt, okay, this is what's going to happen to me, but he did it anyway, right? And so we see so many people that fall into a trap like that, except for maybe they don't die, at least not right away, but they just have all sorts of horrible things happen to them because they're unable to control their lust. So this connection to the opposite sex, it really makes us entangled. It's said that a woman is a multiplier. Have you heard this? So a woman's a multiplier, right? You give her some flour and some water and you get bread, right? You give her a house and she makes it into a home, right? A man gives her his seed and she makes it into a child, right? And then there's a little joke, yeah, and then if you give her a hard, she makes your life a living hell, right? So, but all of this is entangling. If you look at if anybody's been to their single male friend's house, it's like a bachelor pad, right? Usually it's pretty sparsely furnished. There's not much decoration, but it's functional, but there's just not much going on there. Versus if you go to a family home and you see like there's nice furniture, it's very comfortable, it's nicely decorated, it probably smells nice, right? And it's clean, yeah, exactly. There's not, shaving hairs in the sink or whatever. Yeah, and that's because I think it was Parameshwar Prabhu was saying that a woman expands the pleasure, right? That's what was the meaning of the root of the word woman. I think in Sanskrit, I think that's what he said. Yeah. So a woman expands pleasure. Yeah, but okay, so now you have this attraction, you've lost all sense, now you're enjoying with your new partner, and this goes both ways too. It's just, women also have the same problem for men. And now all of a sudden you're entangled with children and work and bills, and now not only do you have your own desires to contend with, but you have the desires of your wife or husband, the desires of your children, the desires of your dog or cat, or your fish, although I'm not sure that we know what the fish's desire is other than to be taken care of. And so we have all these desires that we have to contend with now. So not even just our own. And the problem with is that these desires are never satisfied. Anybody that's dealt with children, could maybe testify to that, right? You just get them a new toy, and shortly after that, they want to go to the store and get another new toy, or they go to the store, please, can I get this? Can I get that? Can I get this? Or when they get older, oh, I need to get my nails done. I need to get my hair done. I need to get a new dress for prom. These desires, they just keep coming, right? It doesn't matter how much you give. There's stories of wealthy kids that come from wealthy families, and they get, say they get a BMW for their 16th birthday, and they get so mad because they wanted, a Mercedes instead. And I've heard multiple stories of kids, purposely crashing their brand new BMW because they wanted a Mercedes, or something like that. So these desires are just never satisfied. So let's see what the Bhagavad Gita has to say. Yeah, so why is it that we keep doing these things, right? We keep doing things that maybe we don't even want to do, but we do them anyway, right? Why do we keep doing this? Arjuna said, this is from the 3rd chapter, O descendant of Vrishni, by what is one impelled to sinful acts, even unwillingly, as by force? The Supreme Personality of God said, it is lust only, Arjuna, which is born of contact with the material mode of passion, and later transformed into wrath, which is the all-devouring sinful enemy of the world. As fire is covered by smoke, as a mirror is covered by dust, or as the embryo is covered by the womb, the living entity is similarly covered by different degrees of this lust. Thus, when the wise living entity's pure consciousness becomes covered by his eternal enemy in the form of lust, which is never satisfied and which burns like fire, the senses, the mind, and the intelligence are the sitting places of this lust. Through them, lust covers the real knowledge of the living entity and bewilders him, right? So we can see this happening in everyday life. I mean, especially around the holidays, right? People go into debt in order to buy presents for their loved ones, right? Because everybody has all these desires, even if it's the desire you want to please your child, or you want to please your loved ones, or you don't want them to think you're poor. That's a big motivation people have also for buying so many presents, right? These are all just desires, and we're bewildered because of this. Okay, so what do we do about it? I mean, everybody has desires, right? We can't stop having desires. So all we can do is purify our desires and dovetail it with Krishna's desires. And so this is kind of the big issue with impersonal liberation, right? If you, a lot of people that are in the yoga world or the meditation world, they're impersonalists. They want to, their goal is liberation. They want to merge into the light. They want to go to the light. They want to merge. And that is a valid place to go. That is something that you can do. But the problem with that is that we have desires, and our soul by nature is active. We can't just stop having these desires. And so ultimately, when you merge, even though you can't actually merge, you're still an individual. Those desires are still there. And so ultimately, you end up having the desire to have a loving exchange with another entity, right? Other than just merging into that light. And so ultimately, you end up having to come back down and start over and try again. So there's something better than that, and that's to actually have a relationship with Krishna. And that way you can have that love and give and take. And if you dovetail your desires with the desires of Krishna, and you purify the desires that you have, it's much easier to get that relationship with Krishna. So, okay, so yeah, how do we stop this? How do we purify those desires? How do we stop this behavior of being controlled by our desires? So both of those series of verses that I read continue on. So from the second chapter, but a person free from all attachment and aversion and able to control his senses through regulative principles of freedom can obtain the complete mercy of the Lord. So there you go, the regulative principles of freedom, which some people laugh, right? They say, how is that principles of freedom? Because, it sounds like a big list of things that you can't do. Well, not a big list, a list with 4 things, right? No meat eating, no illicit sex, no gambling, no intoxication, right? Well, that doesn't sound like very much freedom to me, but it is. It's freedom from being controlled by your desires, right? Because as we heard before, those desires are never satisfied, and they burn like fire, and they're just burning us up. And so there's just no way to keep feeding that fire, keep feeding those flames, and not expect the flames to grow, that fire to grow. And ultimately, it can consume you. And we see this in its grossest form in addiction, right? The people that we see kind of wandering the streets like zombies, because they're just completely ravaged by addiction. And that's, your desires kind of just destroying you. You can also see it, in the super wealthy, right? They have so many things. They have everything you could want, but still they want more, right? There's nothing that's enough. Now we have to go try to colonize other planets, right? I've made more money than everyone on this planet, so let's go to Mars and see what we can do there, right? Right. Meanwhile, if you look at some of these people's lives, their interpersonal relationships are not very good. They're having trouble in their marriages. Maybe they're on their second or their 5th marriage. They have so many children by so many different partners, but it's just not enough, right? You just need just another wife, another husband, whatever it is. Let me just make more money, even though I have more money than I could possibly spend, because those desires are never satisfied. So in the 3rd chapter, the Bhagavad Gita says, therefore, O Arjuna, be best of the Bharatas. In the very beginning, curb this great symbol of sin, lust, by regulating the senses, and slay this destroyer of knowledge and self-realization. So yeah, that's what we do, is we have to regulate our senses, use those regulated principles of freedom, so we can bring that under control. So now I want to talk a little bit about the story of Kubja. So does everybody remember Kubja? So Kubja, she was a hunchback lady. She was just not very attractive. Her name, I think, means twisted. And she was in Mathura, and she was making like perfumes and oils for the king. And she was very good at it. And one day, Krishna and Balaram, they were coming into Mathura, and Krishna saw her, and he asked her, if she would give him some of his oils or her oils. And she agreed. She gave him sandalwood pulp, and she put it on him, even though she was on her way to the king to give them to the king. So she could actually have been severely punished for doing that. But she did it anyway, just out of love for Krishna. She gave him the sandalwood paste. And so Krishna, he ended up, he stood on her toes, and he lifted up her chin with his two fingers, one from each hand. And doing that, he straightened her out, and she became this beautiful young lady, just beautiful. And Kubja, she was sort of lusty, and she was overcome with lust for Krishna, and she started to ask him to please come to my house. She wanted to enjoy with him, and she said, please come to my house. And she started like grabbing at his cloth, and he was like kind of embarrassed. He was a little embarrassed by this behavior, but he agreed. He said, okay, I will come, but not right now. He didn't come right away. So after some time had passed, Krishna did come to see her, and so I wanted to read this little bit from when he went to her house. He went back to her house. So to fulfill his promise, Krishna, along with Uddhava, went to the house of Kubja, who was very eager to get Krishna for the satisfaction of her lusty desires. When Krishna reached her house, he saw that it was completely decorated in a way to excite the lusty desires of a man. This suggests that there were many nude, on top of which were canopies and flags embroidered with pearl necklaces, along with comfortable beds and cushioned chairs. The rooms were provided with flower garlands and were nicely scented with incense and sprinkled with scented water, and the rooms were illuminated by nice lamps. So it says earlier in this story that Kubja became like a society girl, which is sort of like a prostitute, right? They entertain men with their bodies. And so, let's see, in the purport it says, where is it? Oh yeah, when one is agitated by lusty desires, his senses are attracted by all kinds of vishaya, enjoyable things like sound, touch, form, smell, and taste. And so we can see at her house, she had it set up to attract these men with all these different things. This beautiful smells, beautiful, the nice lamps. I mean, it's just decorated just to excite the lusty desires of the man, is what it says. So when Kubja saw that Lord Krishna had come to her house to fulfill his promised visit, she immediately got up from her chair to receive him cordially. Accompanied by her many girlfriends, she began to talk with him with great respect and honor. After offering him a nice place to sit, she worshipped Lord Krishna in a manner just suitable to her position. Uddhava was similarly received by Kubja and her girlfriends, but he did not want to sit on an equal level with Krishna, and thus he simply sat down on the floor. As one usually does in such situations, Krishna entered the bedroom of Kubja without wasting time. In the meantime, Kubja took her bath and smeared her body with sandalwood pulp. She dressed herself with nice garments, valuable jewelry, ornaments, and flower garlands. After chewing betel nut and other intoxicating eatables and spraying herself with scents, she appeared before Krishna. Her smiling glance and moving eyebrows were full of feminine bashfulness as she stood gracefully before Lord Krishna, who is known as Madhava. and the husband of the goddess of fortune. When Krishna saw Kubja hesitating to come before him, he immediately caught hold of her hand, decorated with bangles. With great affection, he dragged her near him and made her sit by his side. Simply by having previously supplied pulp of sandalwood to the Supreme Lord, Krishna, Kubja became free from all sinful reactions and eligible to enjoy with him. She then took Krishna's lotus feet and placed them on her breasts, which were burning with the blazing fire of lust. By smelling the fragrance of Krishna's lotus feet, she was immediately relieved of all lusty desires. She was thus allowed to embrace Krishna with her arms and mitigate her long-cherished desire to have him as a visitor in her house. So even though she had those lusty feelings for Krishna, when she smelled his lotus feet, all her lusty desires went away, and she was able to just embrace him. And still, Krishna fulfilled her desire, though, to have him be a visitor in her house. And so we can see Kubja, just by endeavoring to serve Krishna in whatever way she knew how, even though it may not be the most appropriate way, that was how she knew how. And still, Krishna was very merciful to her, right? And he was able to purify her heart and take those lusty desires away. And so one more story, which I know you all know very well, but illustrates just how we can lose all our sins, right, when it comes to lust, is the story of Ajamil, right? You know, Ajamil, he was a little Brahmana boy. He was very good. He was serving the Lord very nicely. And then one day he saw a prostitute and her client engaged in an embrace, and suddenly he abandoned his service to the Lord and decided to take her into his house as a maidservant, which again is no sense to be found in that, right? You don't take. He was married. He was married to a nice lady, and he decided to take this maidservant, this prostitute, into his house as a maidservant because he liked her, right? And that was a bad idea. I mean, we know how well that works out. We've seen it happen with various celebrities. I think it was Arnold Schwarzenegger, right? He had a child with his maid, to the great embarrassment of his wife. So this didn't go well for Ajamil either. He ended up spurning his good chaste wife and taking up with this prostitute and doing all sorts of unsavory things. Had many, many children with her, like a lot of children, and then was doing many unsavory things to support all those children, and ultimately, had just abandoned his previous life of serving the Lord. However, he did name his son he did name his son. I can't remember now. Narayan, yes, Narayan. And so, at the time of his death, the Yamadutas came, and it was very scary. And he started calling out for his son, Narayan, Narayan, Narayan. And all of a sudden, the Vishnu Dutas came because he had chanted the name of the Lord, right? The Vishnu Dutas came and said, like, I'm sorry, you guys can't take him. He belongs to us. And it actually caused kind of a crisis of faith for the Yamadutas, because they had thought Dhamaraj was the end-all, be-all, but he was not. Ultimately, Ajamil was given a second chance to live a good life, and he took that second chance, and he did. So even though he was sidetracked by lust, which made him completely lose all sense and take that woman into his house with his wife as a maidservant, ultimately, in the end, his calling out to the Lord, even though at the time he was calling out to his son, but the power of the holy name was so strong that it ended up saving him. So I think I'll end there. which is the idea that if we endeavor to serve Krishna, our lives will be perfected. It might take a path we didn't expect, but if we just endeavor to sincerely serve Krishna, our lives will be perfected. So without any further ado, is there any questions? Yes, Uncle S.
Prabhupada mentions in the purport of that Narayan moment that because he chanted in complete anxiety,
Right.
without offense, just complete, it triggered his previous pious activity of worship. Was it worshiping Shalagram?
What's that?
He was, as a youth, he was a Paka Brahmin.
Right.
Yeah. And so that qualified him to receive the mercy. And when this came down the pike, when Prabhupada was translating this pastime, Prabhupada was in LA. And so his Sanskrit editor was Nitai Das. So then Nitai Das read the translation, and in the translation, it said that he called out the name 3 times, Narayan, Narayan, Narayan. And Prabhupada stopped and said, "Did I say 3 times?" He was asking Nitai. And Nitai just looked down, he didn't say anything. "Did I say 3 times?" And finally, Prabhupada said, "Once." Once, that was sufficient in the complete. And then Nitai confessed. Prabhupada, "No, you didn't say 3 times." He said, but he just embellished it.
Right.
So that was very interesting. Yeah, just one time. Yeah.
Yeah, because Krishna never forgets the service set. Right? So even if we get sidetracked, Krishna still remembers the service that we've done. So that's one of the only things in this material world that we can do that's eternal, is our service to Krishna.
Yeah, I just had a dramatic example this morning. It just came over on WhatsApp. A lady said, "I've just heard that Bhakti Vishwamba Madhav Maharaj has left his body in Vrindavan." Now, he was the former Mahamantra in the Radha Damodar party, like 50 years ago, literally 50 years ago. Then he became a sannyasi. But then in the last couple of years, he had dementia. And he completely went nuts, but Krishna didn't, Niranjan Swami, the American sannyasi, arranged for Maharaj to be arranged for his care in Vrindavan. So even though he couldn't even take care of himself, but because he had sincerely served for so many years, he was situated in Vrindavan Dham, and his nickname, by the way, was Tulsi Maharaj, Vrindavan, the forest of Tulsi. So, because he was kind of famous for knowing so much about Tulsi Devi. So there he was, situated in Vrindavan, and then he finally was relieved of that, diseased body, and Krishna took him.
Yeah. And it hasn't Prabhupada said too that because didn't somebody several times, like I think this question was asked a few times where somebody said, like, what if I can't remember Krishna at the time of death? What if I can't, chant at the time of death? And then Prabhupada said, "I will come and get you."
Yeah, or if the person, he did it both ways. If the person said, will you come and get me? And then Prabhupada would say, "Don't make me come back." Depending on the mood, he would reciprocate the mood.
Yeah. Very nice.
Yeah.
So let's just stock up our bank of Krishna Seva. So we have that guarantee. You look like you have a question or some comment?
Didn't Prabhupada tell a devotee, the devotee told Prabhupada that, "I don't know if I'll be able to say Hare Krishna at the time of death. I don't know if I'll be able to say Krishna's name, but if I remember your name. Can I say your name? And didn't Prabhupada
Yeah.
say yes to that?
Yeah. That was another case.
So even if you can chant Prabhupada's name, you're going back.
Yeah.
That's more syllables though, isn't it? Easier to say Krishna.
Or think of Prabhupada, I guess, too. Whatever your thoughts on.
It is purport to 827, where Krishna is talking about the different ways to pass from this world, in light and in darkness. And Prabhupada says it doesn't matter whether you pass in light or in darkness, by accident or arrangement, Prabhupada said. Krishna, even if you circumstantially forget him, Krishna doesn't forget you. So don't
Yeah.
worry about it.
All right. Very
Yeah.
nice. All right. Any other questions, comments? All right. Well, then, Srimad Bhagavatam.